Hi.
Members, can we all return to our seats? This is already 11:15. May I call to order a meeting of the panel on Constitutional Affairs. We formed a quorum. Please be seated. On the 18th of October, at our last meeting, there were 4 valid nominations. However, one of the nominated candidates, i.e. Ms. Tanya Chen, has since been elected Chairman of the Environmental Affairs Panel. So in accordance with our ROP 77.7, no member can be the chairman or deputy chairman of more than one panel, and therefore Ms. Tanya Chen cannot be the candidate for the chairman of the CA panel, so she has lost her eligibility. So we have 3 valid nominations now, namely Mr. Martin Liu, Ms. Lau Xiaolai, and Mr. Sixtus Leung. We have not completed our nominating procedures at the last meeting, so do we have other nominations, please? Mr. Alvin Young, I nominate Mr. Leung Chek-ting. Any seconder, please? Mr. Wu Chi-wai seconds. Mr. Lam Chek-ting, do you accept? I do, Chairman. Thank you. All right. So there are 4 valid nominations. Mr. Gary Chen, in accordance with ROP, I submit that I do not accept Mr. Liu Xiaolai and Mr. Sixtus Leung in this chairman election on the grounds that they have not completed their oath-taking. I think Ms. Starry said the same last time, so we have one more member saying the same. Mr. Look, I agree. To Mr. Gary Chen's view, Lau Xiaolai and Sixtus Leung have not completed their oath-taking. According to ROP 1, they should not take part in the election. I made a ruling last time that under the ROP they can be candidates. I've not heard further views and objection, and therefore I maintain my original ruling. And of course, you're entitled to your views. Any other nominations, please? No, I'll count to 5 and stop the nomination. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, nomination is closed. We have 4 candidates here. We can now distribute the ballot papers. Please note the respective number of our candidates. Number 1, Mr. Martin Liu. Number 2, Ms. Lau Xiaolai. Number 3, Mr. Sixtus Leung. And number 4, Mr. Leung Chek-ting. Right, it seems that we have already distributed all the ballot papers. I'd like to ask all CA members present, if you have yet to receive a ballot paper, please raise your hand. We don't have any, okay? And count to 5, and then we'll stop the distribution of ballot papers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. We stop the distribution of ballot papers. I believe you've all picked your candidate. You're all looking at me, so please collect the ballot papers now. Please put your ballot paper into the box personally and don't leave your seat before you have done so. How many ballot papers have you issued? 48. Okay.
OK， 而家呢個咩啊？
長江就李慧瓊議員提名嘅，所以就兩個。
係。咁另外嗰個咧就係呢個。OK。好嗱，我一陣間咧就會邀請幾位。
I invite the nominators to come to monitor the counting of ballot papers. Mr. Martinez nominated by Ms. Sarili, so please get ready to come out. Ms. Lau Shiolai's nominator was Mr. Cheung-kong. He's absent. Mr. Cheung-kong is the seconder, so please get ready to come out. Mr. Sixtus Leung nominated by Mr. Cheung-kong. All right. And then Mr. Lam Chuk-ting's nominator, Mr. Alvin Yeung. So can these three members get ready to come out?
等先。嗱，手上
Just a minute. If you have received the ballot paper and have yet to put it into the box, please raise your hand. All right, no, so we can start the counting.
就請埋陳志全議員出埋嚟啊。OK， 係，唔該晒。
Mr. Chen Chi-chun, will please come out. Let's mix the ballot papers first. Number 1. Number 4. Number 3. Number 2. Number 4. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 4. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 4. Number 4. Number 1. Number 4. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 4. Number 4. Number 4. Number 1. 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 Number 4. Number 2. Number 1. Number 4. Number 4. Number 1. Number 4. Number 1. Number 4. Number 1. 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 Please count again. We issued 48 ballot papers and received the same number. And results are Mr. Martin Liu, number 1, 31 votes, Ms. Lau Xiaolai, number 2, 2, and number 3, Mr. Sixes Leung, 1, and number 4, Mr. Lam Chuk-ting, 14 votes. I declare Mr. Martin Liu elected. Please come out to take the chair. Thank you for your support. We'll now elect the Deputy Chairman for the panel. Nominations, please. Mr. Lo Kwok. I nominate Mr. Chow Ho-ting, Mr. Holden Chow. Seconder. Mr. Chow, do you accept the nomination? I do. Any other nominations, please? Mr. Wu Chi-wai. I nominate Mr. Lam Chuk-ting. Any seconder, please? Mr. Kenneth Leung, seconds. Mr. Lam Chuk-ting, do you accept? I do, once again, Chairman. All right, we have 2 nominations. Any other, please? Any other nominations, please? Do you have any other nominations? No, then we have 2 nominations for the post of the Deputy Chairman, Mr. Holden Chow, number 1, and Mr. Lam Chuk-ting, number 2. We will proceed to a secret ballot. Staff, please issue each member present with a ballot paper and a chalk. Since this is a secret ballot, please do not show another person your ballot paper, and we will have staff to collect your ballot papers.
Is there any member who has not received a ballot paper? Any member who hasn't got a ballot paper, please raise your hand. If not, then the distribution of ballot paper is closed.
我哋係派出
We have distributed 46 ballot papers. Would the staff please collect the ballot papers?
唔該。
好，收晒。
好，請兩位提名
Can the two nominated members please come out to supervise the counting of votes, Dr. Liu Wai Kwok and Mr. Wu Chi Wai.
請秘書開始點。
Please start counting the votes. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 2. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 2. Number 2. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. 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 Number 2. 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 Number 1. 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 Thank you for the 2 members monitoring the vote counting. We've distributed 46 ballot papers and we've collected the same number. So I now declare the voting results. Mr. Holden Chow's got 30 votes and Mr. Lam Chuk Ting has got 16 votes. I declare Mr. Holden Chow elected as the Vice Chairman of the Panel on Constitutional Affairs for this session. Congratulations. All the ballot papers will be discarded or destroyed under the supervision of the clerk. I believe that you have received the agenda. The next item is the meeting schedule for 2016-17 session. We hold meetings on the 3rd Monday of each month. But for example, well, in view of the Easter holiday and also the debate on the policy address of the Chief Executive, we are changing some of the dates. So that has been listed in the table. Do you have any views? If not, then we will go by the schedule presented. Well, the 17th of April is Easter holiday, so we are suggesting 2 alternative dates. One is the 19th of April, which is a Wednesday a morning, and sorry, it should be afternoon, 2:30 to 4:30 p.m., or the 20th of April, 2:30 to 4:30 p.m. Any views? Should we hold it on the 19th or the 20th? So if there is no other view, then I will leave it to the Secretariat or the Secretariat to make the arrangements. I suggest that we do it on the 19th. All right, any objection? No objection, so that's it. Let's do it on the 19th. Next item is items list of issues suggested to be considered. For the next meeting, the issues to be discussed will be revision of fees under the registration of local newspapers ordinance and also practical arrangements of the 2017 Chief Executive election. These will be the items to be discussed in our November meeting. Any views, members? Dr. Priscilla Leung, followed by Mr. Raymond Chan. I hope that we can discuss this within the session. Mainlanders in Hong Kong, their voting rights. Well, or rather, the Hong Kong people on the mainland, what are their voting rights in Hong Kong? Well, can we do it earlier? Because in the past 2 elections, Many Hong Kong people living and working on the mainland dare not come forward to vote. Mr. Raymond Chan. Thank you, Chairman. I think the panel should review our own work effectiveness. What have we achieved in the past 4 years? Why I'm raising this? The CA panel is the most useless panel. Well, we haven't achieved anything at all. I don't know why we've got 60 members participating in this CA panel, and you've got the 2 seats for the deputy chairman and chairman. We haven't done anything on the political reform, election affairs. We haven't done anything at all. The confirmation letter, that hasn't been discussed at the CA panel. Well, let's just talk and focus on the agenda items. We talk about the practical arrangements for this. Well, there would also be the question of the confirmation letter under the CE election. So can we talk about whether candidates are definitely required to be signing the confirmation letter or not? Also, I would like to talk about the subsidy for the EOC. Now, it's in financial difficulty. Well, the rent being subsidized by the government remains at the same level as that in the past, 10 years ago. Is the government trying to bring to the demise of the EOC? And also early this year, the EOC has commissioned the CUHK to do a study on eliminating discrimination against the sexual minorities, transgender, and so on. And clearly the report suggested that the government should do consultation on legislation, but then it is silent in this list of issues. So can the government be coming to us to talk about what is the response to this report and how is the progress of taking forward legislation? I will put down the points you made and we'll follow up. Dr. Elena Wong, I think we should review immediately the various problems related to the 2016 local elections in, say, issues like the confirmation letters and also the long queues at polling stations. Are the polling stations too small? And all the related issues as well. I find it regrettable that there is this confirmation letter arrangement for the election. The government officials have never come to us to talk about this, and there wasn't any consultation either. So the government must explain to us why this is so. Are they trying to deliberately not consult us on this? Are they trying to take away our power? So I think the executive arm should be accountable to us, the electoral, on this issue. And I agree that we should invite the EOC to come and talk about their work and also the whether the litigation funding coming from the government is enough. Can we ask them to come? And also restarting the political reform. What's the government's plan on that front? You talked about the litigation funding. Well, that can be combined with Mr. Raymond Chan's suggestion. We can discuss these all at one go, so I'll put that on record. Ms. Tanya Chan, thank you, Chairman. First, again on EOC. Well, for the 4 anti-discrimination ordinances, well, the follow-up work on is the review should be discussed, and also legislation on sexual discrimination. How is the progress on that front? And I hope that we can discuss the following item at the next meeting. The chief executive election is coming up, and item 8 is related to the report of the Independent Review Committee for the Prevention and Handling of Potential Conflicts of Interest, and that covers the CE's the requirement on the CE to declare its interest. Now, the new term is coming up, but then this matter seems to be going nowhere. So can we ask the government officials to come and explain whether they are determined to do something?
And of course, the archive policy and also access to information. Yes, monitor of conflict of interest. I hope all these can be included into the list. Next, Ms. Starry Lee. Chairman. Yes, I hope you can communicate with the Bureau the following item: arrangements in the last electrical elections. Many members of the public said that there was something wrong with the seats for District Council 2. Some did not know that they had opted to vote in this FC, and some did not receive a ballot paper on this. And then another issue is our constitutional matters. You know, we are a legislative council under the SAL of the PRC. Directly speaking, all of us should respect one country, two system and the basic law, but there are current members or candidates who do not respect the basic law and one country, two system, and they were allowed to take part in elections. I hope the administration can share with us their position. Ms. Alice Mack. I hope to discuss protection of privacy in public registers. We should discuss protection of privacy for involving public register. I don't think we have the opportunity to discuss that first. Mr. Yu, item 6 of the list, management of government records. The last time we discussed such issues was 2 years ago. I think this is a pressing matter. I hope we can advance the discussion of this item. Another related matter is to demand the government to make public more information. It was exposed by the media that some consultancy used information or internal information bound by the contract not to be used for other purposes in the service of another matter. So I hope we can include this in our discussion. Mr. Lam Cheung-kong, I entirely agree with Ms. Tanya Chen. Justice Andrew Lee's report should be discussed as a matter of urgency. The Siwa Leung promised to carry out the reform before he assumed office. His end is coming to an end, and yet he has done nothing about it. So if we do not discuss it now, then we may not be able to ask him to honor his undertaking. Mr. Lok, I hope we can have the opportunity to discuss district administration and enhancing roles and functions and resources for district councils. District councils is an advisory body, but as we all know, their roles and functions are limited. As a result, they cannot tackle district affairs very effectively. I myself was also a district councillor. I hope we can have an opportunity to discuss this in future CA panel meetings. Thank you. Dr. Fernando Cheung. Yes, I've heard concerns about the electrical elections, recent electrical elections. For instance, some voters did not know why their qualification to vote in the DCFC was abolished, and then in some polling stations, the number of ballot papers issued and received did not tally. And we must ask the EAC to come and explain to us and give us an account. And in past elections, we observed that some elderly inmates or RCHEs were seemingly manipulated and controlled to vote. So I hope the administration can come and tell us whether there are preventive measures to guard against such malpractice. And management of public records should also be discussed as soon as possible. We're going to submit reports to various UN conventions. I urge the administration to conduct public consultation and I report to us details of the reports before they submit them to the UA, and also POBO involving CE. I hope we can discuss this as soon as possible. Dr. An Jiang. Thank you, Chairman. When we review issues related to the recent legislative elections, I hope you can include the following. I think we must face up to this issue. Just before the polling day, there were withdrawal, not formal withdrawal from the elections, but some candidates announced that they would not actively take part in the elections, but they spent millions of dollars in campaigning, and then they came out to appeal to voters to vote for other candidates instead. I don't think this is fair to other candidates. So I urge the administration to really address this issue. And secondly, the qualification of some candidates. People can just spend $50,000 and then in return they can campaign and promote themselves for a few months. So perhaps there is room for improvement, and we should review the threshold of the level of deposit for an election. And I've also received complaints from civil servants that the polling time was far too long. Some civil servants could not vote as a result. They just didn't have time, and there may be tens of thousands of people involved. So should the polling time be so long? How come in other jurisdictions polling was closed at around 4 or 5 p.m. and for us we had to do it overnight, and results took 2 days for results to be announced. Mr. Holden Chow, I'll draw a line here because we have another panel coming up. Mr. Cheung-kong, you raised your hand. All right, 1 minute each. Okay, 1 minute each. Just tell us your proposal. Mr. Holden Chow. Some members asked the EOC to give us a report of their review of the 4 pieces of legislation involving discrimination. Yes, this is needed. Mr. Charles Mock, management of public records and access to information. I'll not repeat what members said already. And I also like to review issues involving the 2016 legislative elections. I hope the discussion can include the following. The administration should give us information on whether there can be a digital, whether the verification of voters' status or identity can be done electronically. Mr. Shiu, I agree that for reports to UN conventions, service users should also be included in the government's consultation. And then on election of members to the EC, Election Committee, I've received complaints that the status or the eligibility of voters is rather chaotic. I hope the EAC can explain to us the voter qualifications or eligibility of the EC elections. All right, I will discuss with the Bureau proposals made by members. There are a few things involving the EOC, their funding, and also review of the 4 pieces of legislation and review of the recent legislative elections. According to the Secretariat, usually in December, the administration will submit a report of the elections in December. Perhaps when the report is submitted to the panel, we can deal with the issues mentioned by members as well. And then declaration of conflict of interest, I'll discuss with the Bureau management of public records, legislation for access to information, and also the voter eligibility or qualification of EC elections. I will discuss with the Bureau, okay? Any other business? For the next meeting, the agenda is revision of fees under the registration of local newspapers ordinance and practical arrangements of the 2017 CE election. Any other matters? If not, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.